You heard it here first. I feel like this new addition to the Deadpool adventure is probably gonna be loved by most fans, and then it's gonna age poorly, exactly like Spider-Man No Way Home.
You're about to be killed by a Zamboni! No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and today we're having a look at Deadpool and Wolverine.
Wait! Time! You look ridiculous.
I actually miss this, to be honest. I miss talking about MCU films, I miss talking about MCU shows, even when they're bad, even when they are mediocre. I don't know, I feel like something is missing in my life lately because we don't have as many superhero movies and TV shows to deconstruct. But thank our Lord and Savior, Marvel Jesus, because we finally have something with a lot of cameos, a lot of postmodernism, a lot of blood, gore, obscenity. We have so much to talk about, and we're gonna be starting with something that looks like it's gonna be spoiler free, so that you can go and see the movie and still be surprised by the whole amount of jokes and cameos that are offered for us fans.
Let's fucking go!
Let's fucking go.
So let's start with the spoiler-free part of this video, which is basically gonna go around the main plot. It's gonna go around the soundtrack / music choices, the comedy, and the performances as well. Those I feel like are all the things that I can talk about. First of all, I can say that when it comes to the overall structure of the movie, it works out quite fine. This is not one of those movies that you go into needed to having seen so many other ones previously. For example, like there are not that many references to Deadpool 1 and 2. It doesn't really feel like the end of the journey as much as a new chapter in this adventure. It doesn't have the same vibe as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, for example. So if you're a casual Deadpool fan, I'm pretty sure you're gonna be loving this. Maybe some references are gonna go completely over your head, but at the same time, you probably still have a good time just because of the amount of jokes and just because there is a lot of action sequences here, and most of them are really well choreographed. Of course, it's not a spoiler to say that Wolverine is part of this film, right? Deadpool and Wolverine, it's literally in the title of the film, and I feel like the chemistry between these two actors is honestly perfect. These are two characters that really belong together.
Roll it. That's a good one. Hey. Yeah, not a good idea. No, we'll go with music from now on. I hate you.
If we can say something very positive about this film, it's one of those superhero films that really feels like straight out of a comic. Like you're watching this film and you're sitting there being like, this is so silly, this is so weird, but in a really fun way. This is not the kind of stuff that you see with DC Comics, for example, where everything is serious, there is a lot of drama, there is a lot of tragedy. Yes, I mean, most of these characters have really bad stuff happening to them, but at the end of the day, you kind of forget about it because of the amount of jokes and the amount of blood and the amount of self-seriousness that this character completely lacks. The character of Deadpool, of course. And when you think about it, Deadpool and Wolverine, these two characters constantly bickering, constantly like trying to kill each other, but never actually being able to. It makes sense, and it's actually quite fun to watch because it almost has some kind of existential philosophical thing where you're sitting there being like, this is almost pointless. Like, stop trying to hurt each other. It's not gonna work. You're just gonna be completely tired and it's completely pointless. But I feel like that's exactly why they end up becoming friends by the end of this film, because they realize that they have quite a lot of things in common. And this is what makes Deadpool films work so well, because most of the characters that surround him kind of like complement him as well. We have so many weird looking characters and interesting villains as well. And the stakes are very often quite personal. This time around, we're trying to save his friends, but at the end of the day, Marvel is still gonna try to do its thing, so the stakes are still gonna be world-shattering, which is kind of annoying, but you don't pay attention to that as well, mostly because you're sitting on Deadpool's seat, so at the end of the day, you know exactly what this type of movie is supposed to be like. You're not taking it seriously, basically. When it comes to the comedy, to be honest, not all of the jokes are gonna land for you, mostly because most of them are references to things that have been happening in the pop culture, culture. They're taking stabs at Marvel, they're taking stabs at the Fox universe, of course. But if there is at least like 70% of the jokes, if not even 50% of the jokes that are gonna make you giggle, if not even laugh, then you still have a really good time.
I can't do this.
Oh, no. Yes, you can.
What the hell am I even doing?
You're explaining to Bachelor Nation why our movie is the perfect date movie while holding this. Oh, I love the smell of sunflowers.
I'm not doing either of those.
When it comes to the performances, I loved Hugh Jackman in this movie. I was really weirded out by the fact that they were picking him out of the movie Logan and the Fox universe as well, only to make him like be even in more pain, and for him to be reliving that, and for Hugh Jackman to having to act all of that pain once again. I thought it would be kind of redundant at the end of the day, but actually wasn't. This ended up being more of like a eulogy, more of like paying respect to all of the Fox characters, and basically a love letter to all the good, the bad, and the mediocre that the Fox production company slash distribution system, I can't remember if it's both or one of the other, has been making for the last 20 years when it comes to superhero cinematic history. So I feel like it's still a positive thing just because of that. If you're gonna go into negatives when it comes to the spoiler-free part of this video, well, you can probably tell just by looking at the first trailer or the first teaser trailer as well. A lot of CGI and a lot of characters standing in the middle of green screens. And that's one of the things that I really harshly criticize. But the weird thing about it is that apparently they built a lot of sets. For example, the 20th Century Fox logo that you can see like in some production images as well as the trailer itself, apparently that was actually constructed. That is not fake. Maybe it has to do with the editing, or maybe it has to do with how this film is lit as well. Everything ends up being quite fake, especially belonging in those scenes specifically. And unfortunately for the film, most of the film takes place in those weird CGI places. And to be honest, I don't like that. We've been criticizing what Disney has been doing with the Star Wars shows and the last few MCU movies as well when it comes to, well, not grounding the characters in real things, in real sets. I'm pretty sure that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had a lot of CGI involved, a lot of green screens, but just because of the amount of details that was apparent on screen, you couldn't really tell. And this is the problem that I have with this movie. It just looks really empty, and I understand that you're trying to create this weird kind of post-apocalyptic vibe slash universe. You can still make it interesting. Just look at The Last of Us, look at other things like even House of the Dragon, where you literally just are in the medieval time. You can still make empty looking environments interesting just by adding way more detail to it. So I feel like if you're a casual fan going into this film, you will be bored by that, because there is not that much stuff to look at the end of the day besides our main characters, which are wearing these incredibly colored like costumes, so they stand out just because everything around them is gray slash dust colors.
This wasn't
This
good.
wasn't a good.
No. Should be better.
It should be better. Yeah, anything would be better.
The music is honestly quite fascinating and really fun. The editing, once again, is probably one of the best things when it comes to the Deadpool films. You could really tell that it's snappy. You don't really see the time going when you're watching a Deadpool movie. And if you're a huge fan of the music from the early 2000s slash late 90s, you're gonna love the soundtrack of this film because it's very nostalgic. And for once, it's not nostalgic about the 80s, and I really dig that. When it comes to the whole overall look of this film, I'm pretty sure it has to do with the fact that the director this time around is Shawn Levy, who has made quite a lot of empty, boring looking film. If you just look at Free Guy, The Adam Project, to name just a few. He's not a Tim Miller slash David Leitch kind of guy. He doesn't really ground things into reality as much, and he's probably a bit of a yes man because he's worked with Ryan Reynolds so much. And at the end of the day, this is one thing you need to remember going into this film, whether you're gonna hate it or love it or be very like meh about it. It's that this film is about its main stars. It's not about like going into a fresh adventure that doesn't resemble anything that you've seen before within the MCU or even the Fox universe. This is about these characters telling a new story with them, but still treading familiar ground at the end of the day. But this is basically all I have to say when it comes to the spoiler-free version. Maybe let's head into more spoilers and deconstruct everything about this movie. I was in a pretty empty cinema, if I have to be honest, but I went at like 1 p.m. where basically people never go to the cinema. So I probably missed a little bit of that audience reaction, like enthusiasm. I was looking around myself, for example, when cameos would appear on screen to see if anyone was reacting the same way that I did. And actually, no, I was the most enthusiastic person there, mostly because this movie kind of reminded me of how much I actually love the Fox universe and everything they've built. Of course, we've got a lot of important cameos which end up actually being part of the plot. This is something that I like. You can't just have cameos which are there just passing through the screen and you forget about them as fast as possible. I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine is kind of like the perfect version of what DC basically did with the movie The Flash, or what they were trying to attempt anyways, especially like tying a bow onto this dying universe. This movie does it perfectly, I think. Of course, you could probably see some of the references behind me, but we've got Elektra, who is back, Jennifer Garner. We have Blade, who got me really excited. We've got Channing Tatum playing Gambit, and I really loved all the effects around him, his costume as well, his silly accent. To be honest, I never understand when Gambit is talking, even when it comes to the animated show, and that was a really funny bit that kept going and going and going. And of course, we also had Chris Evans as the Torch from the Fantastic Four film, which was a very interesting way of disrupting our expectations when it comes to, well, that actor, because now we only see him as Cap. And I feel like Chris Evans' performance really worked. I really didn't perceive him as basically Captain America pretending to be the Torch. It brought me back exactly to that moment in the movie where he was playing that character. And I feel like those are the best things about this movie. It's like every single actor gives you like so much good stuff, even though they have such little to do on screen or even on paper. So you immediately believe that these characters actually exist, and they have existed across all the years until today, basically. Of course, before I was talking about the fact that we have a CGI environment that doesn't work. For me, setting the entire movie mostly in the void was a bit of a shame, because honestly, it's not that interesting. It looks completely empty and boring.
Wow. Enjoy hell, Swamp Mouth.
And of course, they're making a lot of jokes how it looks like Mad Max. And of course, you've got recurring villains, like we got Sabretooth, who is back. We've got Pyro, who is back, who's probably the most interesting villain out there of the one that are coming back. And of course, we have other people for X-Men First Class. And we also have Toad. And Toad and Sabretooth basically die in like literally not even 3 seconds. They don't really even get that much to say. And it's really funny because Deadpool is kind of like hyping up the fight in between Wolverine and Sabretooth, and it just ends as quickly as basically he said it. And I was sitting there being like, I don't really see the point of bringing them back if you're gonna use them this way. I know they've never been really interesting characters, they've been secondary characters, but it's still, why bring them back just to do that? It was kind of weird, and I really don't understand it. I feel like the best way to deconstruct this film is to talk about the characters, pick them up one by one. Let's go back to the different flashbacks, the different backstories, how they've ended up where they are today, and whether the character development actually works at the end of the day. Maybe let's start by Deadpool himself. This movie kind of made me realize that it's a bit of a shame that Deadpool doesn't remove his mask a little bit more, because he's not really able to emote that much. This movie made me realize that even though I like Deadpool, I don't necessarily care about Deadpool. I feel like they've played so much on his powers and the fact that he heals himself to absurd like amount. I think in the second movies he even blew himself up, like at the really beginning of the movie, if I'm not mistaken. So you're sitting there being like, why should I care about this guy? This entire emotional journey for Deadpool is about, he wants to matter. He wants to matter to his friends, to himself, to the world. He wants to be an Avenger. He wants to be a hero. That's his main goal, basically. And there is this moment where Wolverine gets really serious, and to make him shut the fuck up, he's like, no, you don't matter. You're a clown. You're a buffoon. You're completely useless. And then the camera goes back to Deadpool, and I really didn't feel anything coming from him just because he was wearing the mask. I feel like the special effects with the eyes being animated is just not enough to convey any kind of emotion. So I was really happy that the first act of this movie, he kind of like tries to be the straight guy in the room. He has a wig and he has a very boring job as well, and he's celebrating his birthday with his friends, and then people come to actually disturb his peace so that he actually actually has to go in action, right? I liked all of that part, but I feel like we needed way more of that, maybe in the middle act or even the third act. We spent way too much time with him in the mask, and a lot of emotional beats didn't resonate that much with me. That's why I was kind of happy that Wolverine / Hugh Jackman was there, because his performance was just much better than the one that Ryan Reynolds was giving, just because we were able to see it on his face.
What have you done?
Don't get mad. I borrowed some adamantium from your claws, and I made us something special.
Just the two of us.
Yeah.
We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
Like, we could see all the pain of this Wolverine who's basically let all of his people die, and he's gone on a revenge spree and he's killed so many people in his universe, to the point that even when he goes to the bar, people are gonna recognize him and be like, get the fuck out of here, we don't want to see your face. That tragedy is actually quite interesting to explore when it comes to Wolverine. It made me realize that Wolverine has always been a tragic character, and it kind of like gave me some peace as well when you realize that this movie ends on Wolverine actually being part of a family with X-23 as well, even though it's not his X-23, because they've never actually built that relationship, because he's from another universe. But anyways, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And the fact that this movie basically ends on them being happy all together, I feel like this is a version of Wolverine at this point in time right now that feels way more interesting than all of the other ones we've seen in the past. It feels like something new. It feels like a Wolverine that has actually learned something from him trying to be a loner constantly. Every single movie that the Fox has made about Wolverine, when you think about it, is all about him trying to create a family, the family being destroyed, or him making a mistake, killing someone, being suicidal. It's always the same thing. It would be nice to see a Wolverine that is actually happy to be part of a team, and I loved that this movie actually sets up that emotional journey, gives us the conclusion that he doesn't need to be alone at this point. He can be forgiven and he can build something new, maybe with Deadpool and his friends in this new universe. I really like that. I feel like Wolverine kind of stole the show. He is the heart of this movie at the end of the day, and I really understand when Ryan Reynolds was talking about the fact that if Hugh Jackman didn't tell him that he wanted to come back, or that he was ready to come back as Wolverine, there was no movie.
I have nothing. Yeah. It's just completely empty up here. And terrifying. But we did have one idea. Hey Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time?
Because this entire movie is built around the fact that without Wolverine, this universe is basically dying, and there will be nothing else. And I like that. I really also like the jokes about the fact that everyone loves Wolverine, like as they are actually watching him live his life and make sacrifices and try to save his friends. You can see it in the TVA scene, for example, where everyone is just looking at the screen. And it was really, really touching, to be honest, because that's how we all feel about Wolverine. And it was quite cool to see other people within like the narrative itself seeing him like that as well. To be honest, the intro to this film is probably one of the best things that I've seen in a really long time. It really reminds me of the cool intro from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. The music was perfect. The CGI part, when he was dancing like face cam basically, worked as well, mostly because it was the intro, the titles were coming there, the actors' names and stuff like that, so it worked because of that. If that scene was appearing actually in the middle part of the movie, I would have found it way more cliche, if not even boring to look at. But the fact that he's literally starting this movie by desecrating the memory of Logan, which is probably one of the best films ever made if you just look at the superhero genre, by using adamantium bones to kill people of the TVA, is just the funniest thing ever. And of course, of playing with time once again, rewinding it so that we understand why he actually did that. It was kind of clever at the end of the day. I'm not surprised they did it. And I also really like the motivation of why the TVA ends up going to get him, and they want to save him, to use him as a weapon, because they know that he's actually incredibly effective at killing people, because he will never stop. He's basically unstoppable. That's a funny thing that also they explore at the end of this film. I'm gonna talk about it later with the gangs of Deadpools and the different types of Deadpool. But when it comes to the TVA, I actually was worried a little bit when I went into the film, and I was asking myself, why would the TVA try to recruit Deadpool when he literally changed time using cable Cable's device. It makes a lot of sense. The universe is dying, so that universe maybe was never meant to actually exist in the way that it is. So even if Deadpool went back in time and changed things within the Fox universe, to the TVA it didn't really matter because they have a way of seeing things in 2000 years in advance, for example, so they know that that universe was gonna die, so he was not really creating that many problems at the end of the day. That was a perfect way of answering my dilemma when it comes to why would the TVA recruit him when he is a bit of a disruptor of the timeline already. And it would make sense also that he would be rejected by the Avengers, but I feel like that moment needed a little bit more weight. Maybe just the fact that you were jumping back and forth in time, that's why it didn't work. I also didn't like the fact that the Vanessa thing with him breaking up with her, it's actually her breaking up with him technically, and we slowly discover why that happened. It's a bit weird because every single movie is about putting her in danger, and it's weird that we don't get one movie where they're just happy together. I don't know, I feel like the motivation of them being split apart once again is just incredibly weird, and for a movie that has so much going on when it comes to the Fox universe, trying to fit all of these puzzle pieces together, breaking up the relationship was one piece too much that we really didn't need at the end of the day. I really like the fact at the end of the day that this is a film about friendship, and besides the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, we don't really have that many superhero movies about deep friendships. I really like the weird characters that Deadpool has surrounded himself with. They're really funny, even though they don't have that much going on or they have no character arc. I don't really mind. It's just funny that he's created this surrogate family for himself. I really love the fact that Wolverine manages to join it at the end of the day. He fits perfectly within this family of weirdos, and I don't know, just because of that, I was sitting there being like, this film still feels satisfying even though it is so flawed. Because from a screenwriting perspective, even the idea of using a villain like Cassandra Nova, for example, it's a bit of an issue for me, mostly because she's supposed to be as powerful, if not even more, as Charles Xavier. The whole idea of basically how the TVA sent her into the void before she was even born, it's incredibly fascinating, or even the idea that they could do that. It changes everything, like from a timeline perspective where people can literally manipulate living beings that are not even born yet because they know that they're not supposed to be born within a specific universe. They're gonna send them immediately away to be born and to be raised within the void. It's incredibly existential and sad, and I understand why she turned out that way. I also really liked Emma Corrin's performance. I feel like she delivered something quite cool, specifically because she's a one-note character. We don't really explore her that much because she's lived so much in the void that she doesn't really have that much of a backstory to explore. She has no link with any of the different Earths or universes. Even the moment when like Wolverine is like, I'm pretty sure that Charles Xavier, if he found out that you were here, he would have come saving you. He would have ripped the universe apart to save you. I don't really believe that. He would have been like, she has never existed. Why would I save her? Like, I don't know that person. Why would I do that? And I'm pretty sure that she wouldn't even have a connection with Charles Xavier because they've never met. And she has no connection with the real world either. I don't know. Just because of that, there is no intimacy when it comes to the villain trying to achieve her goal and the main character trying to achieve his goal as well. Basically, these are two people who are trying to achieve different things and they're just annoying each other just because they are in the way. And I feel like it's not like the best kind of villain that you can build within a third movie, maybe even the end of a franchise. It's kind of weird, and I also really don't understand her powers. They didn't really explain it that well within the movie. I'm pretty sure if you read the comics, you know exactly why. She gets shot multiple times, she gets stabbed by Wolverine at one point as well, and she healed herself even though she's supposed to have the same powers as Charles Xavier, right? It would have been so easy if maybe she doesn't have regenerative powers, if she just like showed that that was a vision, as in like Scarlet Witch does as well, where basically like she shows you being able to kill her, but it's actually completely fake and she's actually in your mind trying to manipulate you, right? If she did that, it would have been way more clever, but I really don't understand why they made her so unkillable. In fact, everyone within this universe, the regenerative powers are supposed to be something that you don't really touch, and you just give a couple of characters and you give limitations to those characters as well, so that they have other flaws that like don't permit them to be completely unstoppable. But Deadpool and Wolverine within this movie are completely unstoppable, so at some point within the action sequences it's really hard to care. And actually when Blade, Elektra and Gambit are fighting and you could see them getting hurt, I worried way more about them, even though they were secondary characters that we didn't really know that much and we hadn't seen in a long time. X-23 as well, she had almost nothing to do with this film, and honestly I kind of feel like they tainted her memory a little bit, because I wanted her to be happy to have a normal life, and to find out that actually she's been sent in the void, that fucks it up a little bit. I feel like there was no way that we're not gonna be able to completely fuck up Logan. They fucked it up a little bit, but I don't know, I feel like this is what they always did with the Fox universe. The X-Men universe specifically was always a mess, and Deadpool and Wolverine exists on that line as well, even though it exists as a perfect love letter as well, as I said before, to all the good and the bad that they've managed to create. In fact, I really loved that within the credits, the end credits, we managed to see all of the like backstage footage of all of these people coming together to make these films. It was incredible, and I really loved that. It was a really fine touch. And I also really liked the fact that they like kind of predicted the future and they showed the Deadpool things that he actually doesn't know. This shows some kind of limitations when it comes to his power of fourth wall breaking, where basically he doesn't know the future as well as the TVA does, and that's kind of cool. I like that. I feel like they should have explored that part way too much. Maybe they should have shown how the TVA would always be one step ahead Deadpool, just because they know the future and they have access to all the different multiverses, so they know technically how Deadpool is gonna react and how he's gonna fight as well. I feel like they showed the TVA as way too incompetent. They should have been way more brutal in my opinion to make us care a little bit about this version of Deadpool, instead of making him almost unkillable. And this reaches a peak at the very end, where we get Deadpool and Wolverine, when Wolverine is actually wearing his official suit. It looks incredible, fighting a gang of Deadpools. They actually kill them in a really fun way, and then they start regenerating and they're like, okay, this is gonna go forever. And that was the most comic book thing possible, but they did it well for one simple reason, is that Peter actually shows up and he's like, he's my Deadpool, like don't hurt him, and that's what stops all the Deadpools from actually trying to kill our main characters, and that makes so much sense. I feel like they should have exploited way too much comic book rules. If Deadpool is supposed to be unkillable, if Deadpool is so incredibly powerful and he doesn't really care about anyone or anything, the only way to make him stop is basically to distract him. And how can you distract Deadpool? Have one of his sidekicks slash friends magically appear so that they all go to him and then they can escape. It makes a lot of sense, and I kind of wish that it did that a little bit more. Exploit the weaknesses of these characters and give them a little bit more three-dimensionality at the end of the day. This is the third film in the franchise. I need to remind you of that. Like, we need to go deeper. That's why I'm like, I feel like this is gonna age poorly like No Way Home. As in, everyone is probably gonna have the best time ever at the cinema, and probably you're gonna watch it a second time and be like, ha, this is really fun, and you're gonna notice more cameos, more little Easter eggs hidden at the back of every single shot. But then you start wondering, what does this actually bring to the MCU, and is this actually memorable as a Deadpool film? And to be honest, I really don't think so. I think that this has a lot of incredible action sequences, a lot of memorable moments, but it has so many flaws that it will not stand up to the test of time at the end of the day. For the time being, I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, because I still had a really good time, and I have some positive things to say at the end of the day. I'm just very skeptical, and I prefer to lower my expectations and be critical so that we get better movies in the future, instead of being like, this is the best thing since Endgame, which is really not true, because Endgame was still an incredible emotional journey that got to that point, you know? This film doesn't really feel like that, even though it has really strong moments. Like, I'm pretty sure that the moment where Deadpool and Wolverine are kind of like joining hands to save the universe, great moment, especially since Wolverine has never been given that chance. He's never been given the chance to actually be kind of like an Avenger, trying to save the universe and actually succeeding, and not only saving the universe but also not dying at the same time. And he realizes that, funny enough, by working with someone, it's the only way of making sure that you get out of it alive. So this is the moment where you actually manage to teach a lesson to Wolverine after so many different films, so many attempts at his life as well. This movie here is the only movie that managed to teach a good lesson to Wolverine / Logan, to the point that he might actually have a chance at living a happy life in the future. And I feel like that is still worth something. But let me know down in the comments what you thought of all of this. Are you a fan of Deadpool and Wolverine, the movie, the characters? Did you see a lot of other comic book references that I completely forgot? Let me know down in the comments. But for me, it's still a recommendation, this film. Of course, go and seek it out. I feel like it still has a lot of postmodern interesting things going on, and I feel like also we need more movies like this instead of these self-serious types that we're gonna be getting in the future, especially coming from the DC universe. Having said that, I hope you liked this video. As usual, down here at the bottom I'm gonna be putting other videos probably talking about MCU movies and shows, so you can click on them and you can support my channel even more. And here at the top I'm gonna show you the topic of my next video, which is coming out in 2 weeks. Don't forget to smash that like button, because every single time that you do that, you give Wolverine a chance to have a happy life, maybe with X-23 as a surrogate daughter, or maybe with his newfound family.
Can I count on you?
I mean, Wolverines deserve a happy life. And just by looking at that montage of incredibly sad, lonely Logans across the different multiverses, come on, can there be at least one happy Canadian, maybe Wolverine, like the one that we had with Nice Pool? It would be nice, just for a change. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
It's coming from out there.
Hey, Bub. You're in a movie theater, not the off room in your mom's nursing home. So turn your phone to silent, or I'll shove it so far up your you'll have to answer it through your throat.
No. Da 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 da.